The jar is finished. It's evening, sometime in the 1600s. A potter stands at his bench in a body that has worked since first light. His hands are cracked from the wet clay and the wedging. His back holds the particular ache that comes from a day bent over the wheel. He is tired in the way that a long sleep will mend. He looks at the jar on the board, and something quiet settles in him. The work is done, and he can see that it's done. It sits where he can put his hand on it, and the shape of it came up under that same hand. Now move forward 3.5 centuries. It's 5:30 in the evening, and someone closes a laptop. The hardest thing their body did all day was carry a cup of coffee from the kitchen, and still there is a dread sitting low in them, formless, the residue of a day that left no mark on anything a hand could touch. The body sat in a good chair for 9 hours. The nervous system did not rest for a minute of them. A deadline reaches the body as a threat, and the body answers the only way it knows how, flooding itself for a fight or a flight that never arrives. So we go home wrung out, having lifted nothing all day. Two people, two kinds of exhaustion. The potter is spent in his body and settled in himself. We are intact in our bodies and unsettled everywhere else. The usual account of modern misery points to wages and power, and both of those are real. But the trouble underneath them is much older. It sits in the gap between the work we were shaped over thousands of years to do, and the work we actually spend our days doing. For almost the whole of human history, labor followed the rhythm of the living world and ended in something a person could see and hold. We have taken that apart piece by piece. What we are left with is a way of working that leaves us strangers to our own nature. The thing that told a person when to work for most of history was the work itself. The hay came in when the sky turned and rain sat an hour off, and a man stayed in the field past dark to beat it, because the hay did not care what the hour was. Winter hardened the ground and emptied it, and the labor slowed to match, turning to mending and to waiting. The year had a shape, and what a person did took that shape because there was no other way to do it. The historian E.P. Thompson had a name for this older way of working. He called it task orientation. The job in front of a person sets the terms. The work begins when it needs beginning and ends when it is finished or when the light fails, and the length of the day belongs to the day. A man with that kind of authority over his work kept his own calendar. There was a custom in the English trades the workers called Saint Monday. No church had ordained it and no almanac marked it, yet the artisan who worked for himself would take the Monday off to recover from Sunday's partying and make the hours up later in the week when it suited him. The week had given it. It bent around the worker. The hours were still long and the labor was still hard. What the artisan held was the shape of his own time, the say over when the work happened and at what pace, and that say was the thing he would lose. Then came the mechanical clock, and behind it the factory built to its beat. We move from working by the task to working by the time. The block of hours comes first now, and we pour whatever we have into it, full or empty, ready or not. The clock does not know whether the field is ready or the leather is cut, and it doesn't care. It knows that it's 8 in the morning, that we are to be at the gate, and that we are to remain for a count of hours laid down before we arrived. This new discipline had to be taught, and it was taught against resistance. People who had always worked by the task did not take easily to the bell in the locked gate. The rigid regime of the factory had no place for Saint Monday, and the custom was worn down and finally killed off until the week ran smooth and uniform and belonged to the company rather than the man. A person can finish everything that genuinely needed doing by 2 in the afternoon and still owe the clock 3 more hours, and so the afternoon gets filled because the time is there and must be answered. Picture a village cobbler in that older world. The leather comes to him from a tanner he knows by name. He cuts it on his own bench, stitches it by hand, shapes the boot over a last worn smooth by his grip. When it's done, he carries it down the lane and puts it into the hands of the neighbor who will wear it through the winter. He has moved through the whole of it, sourcing to stitching to the moment a real foot slides in. His body was the instrument the entire way. The Greeks had a word for the knowledge in his hands, techne, the art of making a thing well, where the quality of the boot carries the mark of the man who made it. A good boot meant a good cobbler, and everyone in the village could read the one from the other. His character sat there in the leather for anyone to judge. Many of us today have lost that. We send an email and watch it vanish, put numbers into a spreadsheet and send it off, and the thing we're supposedly making stays abstract, a number that shifts somewhere, a process that advances without ever resolving into an object we could hold and be proud of. We sit pinned to a desk while the work happens entirely in our heads and on a screen, and it never closes. There's no final product at the end of it. We're not the authors of anything. We're operators standing at one station on a line we cannot see the ends of, cogs in the machine. Work in that older world was a kind of making the ancient Greeks would have recognized. They called it poiesis, a bringing forth. The farmer does not command the wheat. He works with the soil and the weather and the season, and the wheat comes up through him. The carpenter looks at the grain of a plank and finds the table already waiting inside it, and the work is to bring it out. The maker and the world are partners in the thing made. Something gets coaxed into being that was latent there all along. Martin Heidegger spent years on this, and he saw that modern systems had stopped working this way. He gave the new arrangement a name, Gestell, which comes into English as in framing. The system sets upon the world and orders it to surrender what it holds. A river stops being a river. It becomes a measured quantity of power, waiting behind a dam to be drawn off when the grid calls for it. Heidegger called everything seen through this lens the standing reserve. The world held as a stockpile, kept on hand, valued only for what can be extracted from it. We are inside that stockpile too. A person becomes a measured quantity of labor, kept ready, drawn off as needed, and counted on a sheet at the end of the quarter. We call this human capital or head count. We file the human being on the same shelf as the timber in the dammed river, one more reserve to be managed toward its most efficient use. Jacques Ellul carried this down into the grain of ordinary life. He wrote about technique, the steady spread of standardization into every corner of how we live, the search for the one most efficient method and its imposition wherever it can reach. For Ellul, efficiency had swallowed every other consideration and become the only question we are still permitted to ask. The question of whether a thing should be done at all quietly falls away, and what is left is how to do it faster. Technique has no patience for the particular. It looks at human unpredictability and sees a flaw to be corrected. It looks at the body's need for rest and sees friction to be filed away. We are biological creatures made for the rhythm of the field, and we have been set to run at the constant pace of a system that knows no winter. A carpenter in the old world built a chair, and the chair told him at once whether he had built it well. He sat in it, and it held, or it gave way under him. Gravity was the judge. The work answered to something outside the man, something with no interest in how hard he had tried or how he felt about the result. Matthew Crawford left a think tank to repair motorcycles, and he wrote about what the trade taught him. In shop class as Soulcraft, he sets the mechanic beside the knowledge worker. The broken motorcycle either runs when he is finished or it does not, and no amount of charm will turn the engine over. The office has no such floor beneath it. Whether we have done well rests on a manager's mood, on a number that moved last quarter, on a run of corporate words that means one thing this year and something else the next. The strange dread of the office grows out of that. We carry a low sense of being frauds who will one day be found out, because the work never settles into a thing we can point to and call plainly good. We take it on faith or on someone else's word, and that is a thin place to stand. Simone Weil was a philosopher who, in the 1930s, left the lecture hall and took a job on a factory floor. She wanted to know what the work did to the people who spent their lives at it, so she stood at the machine herself and found out. What she found was a precise kind of cruelty in standardized labor. Attention was what Weil cared about above all else. She thought it the ground of the inner life, the root of real thought and of prayer. Standardized work wears that power down. It asks just enough of the mind to drain it, and never enough to engage what makes us human. We end up too busy to think and too bored to find any meaning in the day. The cost follows us home because the faculty we would turn toward a book or toward the people we love has already been spent on the line. We feel exhausted and aimless because the day no longer fits the creature living it. We work by the clock instead of the task, fragments of a process we never see whole, judged by a standard with no floor under it, running at the pace of a system that never stops, only speeds up. None of that is a personal failing. The tiredness is the right response of a healthy animal to conditions built without it in mind. But knowing this changes less than we would like and more than it seems. Most of us can't walk out and take up the forge, and a video telling us to would be lying about how the rent gets paid. The mismatch is real, and most of us will spend our working lives inside it. What being aware of it does is take away the second weight, the suspicion that the exhaustion is our own fault, that other people have found the trick of it and we alone are failing to cope. Besides simply being aware of who we are and why we feel the way we do, there is something we can do that's worth a try. Find a corner of life where the old completed cycle still runs. Bake a loaf of bread from scratch and eat it. Build a garden, turn the soil, water it, and wait for what comes up. Learn how to make something from raw materials and fully dive into the process from start to finish. Do something where the world tells you plainly whether you did it well, where gravity sits in judgment instead of a manager, and let it give back a little of what the working day takes. It will not undo the system we're in, but it can return a sliver of what we lost, the knowledge in our hands, the cycle carried through to its end, what the ancient Greeks called poiesis, a purpose and something to hold and be proud of. If you enjoyed this video, you should check out this video about the modern death of friendship. Also consider liking, subscribing, hitting the notification bell, and leaving a comment about your thoughts. I love reading through what you all have to say. Thanks again, until next time.